The critical information of a business is constantly at risk. Identifying these security threats is essential for protecting this data. However, some threats are greater than others. Some mitigating strategies cost more than others. How do you make the correct choice? Adopting a rigorous risk assessment methodology provides the data necessary for setting priorities. There are numerous approaches to do a risk assessment, each with its own advantages and disadvantages. We will assist you in determining which of these 6 approaches to risk assessment is most suitable for your firm. What is risk assessment? Risk assessment is how organizations decide what to do in the complex security environment of today. There are dangers and vulnerabilities everywhere. They may originate from an external actor or an inattentive user. They may even be integrated into the infrastructure of the network. Decision makers must comprehend the immediacy of the organization's risks and the expense of mitigation initiatives. Risk evaluations aid in establishing these priorities. They assess the potential impact and likelihood of every risk. Then, decision makers can prioritize mitigation activities based on the organization's strategy, money, and schedule. Risk assessment methodologies. Organizations may analyze risks using quantitative, qualitative, semi-quantitative, asset-based, vulnerability-based, or threat-based methodologies. Each methodology may analyze the risk posture of an organization, but they all include compromises. Quantitative. The analytical rigor of quantitative methodologies is brought to the process. Both assets and hazards have monetary prices. The resulting risk assessment can then be presented in terms that are easily understood by executives and board members. Analyses of costs and benefits allow decision makers to select mitigating solutions. However, a quantitative approach may not be suitable. Some assets and hazards are difficult to quantify. Forcing people into this numerical approach necessitates subjective decisions, weakening the objectivity of the evaluation. Additionally, quantitative procedures might be rather difficult. It might be challenging to convey results beyond the boardroom. Additionally, some firms lack the internal expertise required for quantitative risk evaluations. Organizations frequently incur additional expenses to acquire the technical and financial expertise of consultants. Qualitative. In contrast to quantitative methods, qualitative methods adopt a more journalistic approach to risk evaluation. Assessors meet with individuals from around the organization. Employees discuss how or whether they would complete their duties in the event of a system outage. Assessors utilize this information to roughly classify hazards as high, medium, or low. A qualitative risk assessment gives an overview of how hazards affect the operations of a company. Qualitative risk assessments are more likely to be understood across the enterprise. Alternatively, these methods are inherently subjective. The assessment team must create scenarios that are easily described, formulate questions and interview techniques that eliminate bias, and then interpret the results. Without a sound financial basis for cost-benefit analysis, it might be impossible to select mitigation strategies. Semi-quantitative. Some businesses will combine the aforementioned approaches to generate semi-quantitative risk evaluations. Using this method, corporations will assign a numerical risk value using a numerical scale, such as 1 to 10 or 1 to 100. The lowest third of risk items are classified as low risk, the middle third is medium risk, and the top third is high risk. Combining quantitative and qualitative approaches eliminates the intensive probability and asset value calculations of the former while producing more analytical assessments than the latter. Semi-quantitative approaches might be more objective and give a solid foundation for ranking risk elements. Asset-based. Traditionally, firms assess IT risk using an asset-based methodology. In addition to the information itself, assets include the technology, software, and networks that manage an organization's information. A typical asset-based assessment consists of 4 steps. Inventorize all assets. Evaluate the efficacy of current controls. Identify each asset's threats and vulnerabilities. Assess the probable impact of each risk. Popular asset-based techniques connect with the structure, operations, and culture of an IT department. The hazards and controls of a firewall are simple to comprehend. However, asset-based methods cannot generate exhaustive risk evaluations. Certain dangers are not a part of the information infrastructure. Policies, and other soft variables can expose an organization to the same level of risk as a firewall that has not been patched. Vulnerability-based methods broaden the scope of risk assessments beyond the assets of an organization. This procedure begins with an analysis of the known shortcomings and deficiencies within organizational systems or their operating settings. Assessors then determine the potential threats that could exploit these vulnerabilities, as well as the potential implications of such attacks. Integrating vulnerability-based risk assessments with a company's vulnerability management process exhibits efficient risk management and vulnerability management processes. Although this technique captures more risks than a solely asset-based assessment, it is focused on known weaknesses and may not account for the entire spectrum of threats an organization faces. Threat-based methodologies can provide a more comprehensive evaluation of a company's entire risk posture. This method examines the risk-generating conditions. As assets and their controls contribute to these conditions, an audit of assets will be included in the assessment. Beyond the physical infrastructure, threat-based techniques include other factors. By evaluating the strategies employed by threat actors, for instance, assessments may reorder the priority of mitigating measures. Training in cybersecurity mitigates social engineering assaults. An asset-based evaluation may place a higher priority on systemic controls than on employee training. On the other side, a threat-based assessment may conclude that increasing the frequency of cybersecurity training reduces risk at a lower cost. Choosing the right methodology. None of these approaches is flawless. Each has advantages and disadvantages. Fortunately, none of them contradict one another. Intentionally or by necessity, businesses frequently integrate these methodologies in their risk assessments. The approaches you employ when building your risk assessment process will rely on your objectives and the type of your firm. If board level and executive approvals are the most crucial criterion, your approach will tend toward quantitative methodologies. If you need the support of employees and other stakeholders, qualitative methods may be more effective. Threat-based assessments address today's complicated cybersecurity landscape, while asset-based evaluations connect organically with your IT infrastructure. Only by continually monitoring your organization's risk exposure can you secure critical data from modern cyber attacks. The compliance automation platform from Drata monitors your organization's security controls to ensure audit readiness.